We've got you here today, but we haven't seen much of you at the forums and things that have been going on.
Mainly because you guys don't ask what I'm going to do for the paper. Most other forums, if you get their questions, it's what you're going to do for them, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
The Rotary Club?
They couldn't spell my name right.
Oh.
So if they're real community activists, I've been an alderman for 12 years, and we used to call it KUNTC.
Okay.
And their forum was going to be Health and Human Services in Springfield.
Okay.
Been an alderman for 12 years. I've listened to a lot of complaints. That was not one of them.
Plus, we don't have a health department.
No, it's county. And again, you get in one of the other ones when they want to know what you're going to do for District 186. District 186 is its own taxing body. If you want to give everything to us like they do in Chicago, that's different. But I can't see the mayor's job is to take care of the city of Springfield first and foremost. Everybody else has an elected board. They raise their own revenues. I mean, you got to work with them. We work with them on the police department inside the schools, but Springfield has to realize the mayor of Springfield is going to have to dedicate his time or her time to the city of Springfield. We got problems, and they're only going to be solved if the mayor takes the lead in fixing those problems.
Okay.
So that's basically, and I just can't afford to go to every one of them. I'm self-employed. I have to do some work or I'm going to lose customers. And a lot of them are at noon. If I got to do something at noon, that means I can't work in the morning because they really don't want me showing up in my work clothes.
Okay. Your campaign overall has been fairly low profile. Some people are going to see that as, does he really want this job that badly?
We mailed out over 6,000 first-class envelopes with our brochures, and I know they got into 6,000 households. I do not have the money to do radio and TV, and if you do that, that means you become beholden to somebody, because the only way you're going to raise that kind of money is to go out and ask for it for individual groups. One of the candidates has raised over $100,000 since the beginning of the year, all in over $1,000 contributions. So, I mean, I've held a few fundraisers, and I get to $25 at a time. Somebody like me, it takes more money to raise money at those increments than it does people who are willing to shell out $10,000, $20,000 at a time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we're going to mail out another 8,000 first-class voters. I work every day. I'm in every part of the city every day. I talk to people every day. It was going to always be a grassroots campaign because someday in this country things have got to change about the amount of money being spent on campaigns and only talking to certain groups, and everybody else just gets left out. Now, it may not work, but I was going to give it a try. That's how I wanted being an alderman. I did not do it the conventional way as an alderman.
It's kind of funny because now, over the last week, the big issue has come up. Who's independent? Mike Coffey says, I'm independent now. Houston says, I'm independent.
I'm the only one who didn't go ask nobody for no endorsements. So the rest of them can say what they want, but I never asked nobody.
Okay.
Never filled out no papers for no endorsements. Never went to the unions for no endorsement. Didn't go to either party for the endorsement. So everybody else can say what they want. I didn't. I told the two guys that lost the best thing they could do is take care of themselves. They did, and didn't ask for their endorsement. And they both called me. I never called a person.
All right.
So they called you. What would they?
I was in Tunica when they called. We just Jeff Nimzek called from McCarty. I had beers with him, and Mike Farmer called me, and I had lunch with him at Delaney's. I told both of them, do whatever's best for yourself, and I offered neither one of them. I said, if you wanted to back me, you can have some fun, because nobody would ever dreamt that would happen. So they took care of what they were supposed to do.
Were they were they seeking something from you? And
No, but they're the ones who called me. I would have never called them. I mean, yeah. Farmer I would have talked to at city council, but I would have never dreamt in a million years calling them and asked for their endorsement.
How do you view the whole Houston thing with them? Is that coalition building like he says, or is it quid pro quo?
You know what? I'm running for the office of mayor. I don't care what they do.
Yeah.
I have my personal opinion is what it is, but it has nothing to do with the campaign.
Okay. Frank, can you give us just kind of your broader view of the city's budget situation, and what would you see as your first task budget-wise if you're elected as mayor?
The first task, you have to start out small. As a mayor, I won't travel on city money. Therefore, I can go ahead and cut everybody's travel budget down to the absolute need. We are out of money. We are subjected to contracts for 2 and 3 years down the line to give out raises, and they're not sure the revenue is going to come in. So they're going to have to start out small and at the top in order, when the union contracts do come up, you're going to say, here, I've done all I can, you got to give something now. A little over 50% of the budget is fire and police, and for every candidate who keeps saying they're not going to touch fire and police is ridiculous, because it's going to happen. Now, how you do it is going to be the key. In the city of Springfield right now, there's 3 old firehouses. The one across from the Army, the one at MacArthur and Edwards, and the one out 6th in North Grand. And they've been closed. Somebody over here some days will have to have the political willpower to close firehouses and move them. And as far as, I said it on the radio the other day, as far as Piper Glen goes, they may have to be covered by Chatham forever, because Piper Glen should have never been brought into the city limits of Springfield. Now, I got in trouble for saying that because those people were calling it a radio station. But that is the honest to God truth. Centennial Park should have never been brought into the city. A $300,000 house brings us $937 in property taxes a year. That's it. None of these subdivisions were ever going to pay for themselves. And the only way older cities have rejuvenated is you stop the outward growth and turn back inward. And that's what has to be done someday in Springfield. Now, hopefully, with the Kern Gardner Water District winning their lawsuit, and without the new YMCA is going to be built, they're going to be on Kern Gardner water. So they're going to pay 3 or 4 times what they're going to pay the city of Springfield. But everything west of there now, from now on, that's built will have to be on Kern water. So the cheap water is going to be gone. So that might slow the growth down. But I've been around long enough. I wasn't on the council for Piper Glen, but I've been around long enough to see the political favors handed out to developers to jump across land so somebody didn't have to deal with this. So that's how Centennial Park got into the city limits. Way too far out.
Now, what about Mayor Edwards now is doing battle with the fire department about going from the 49 staffing to the 46. What do you, is that something that you think the city
They're going to have to. That was given out, and I'm not 100% sure when it was given out. I was told in Karen before I got on underneath Karen's administration. That minimum manning was a gimme to a union contract, so they didn't have to give out raises. And what you have now at the fire department, you have the guys and gals who like to work 2 jobs, and you have all the people who are reliant on that $600,000 in overtime. You have 2 sets of firefighters. One that want their 2 days off to pursue their own businesses, and the ones that want every bit of overtime so they don't have to go out and get another job. And that's why they fight it so hard. According to what I was told, when the first minimum banning vote come up, they only lost by 7 votes. And that was the people who depended on the overtime was not about to give it up.
This is when this was included in the contract?
Yeah, no, just this last time when Frank tried to do it. Yeah, it was a very close vote. It was a very close vote when Tim was alive and they did the thing on the furlough days. There was like 13 older guys who were going to retire and they didn't want to give up their pay. And it gets between a fight between the young and old over there.
Is there logic to hiring more firefighters to cut down on that?
There would be if we had the money, but we don't have the money. You reach a point, in all actuality, fire department pensions are based on their base pay, not what they make a year. IRMRF pensions are based on whatever a person makes in a year. So there comes a point in time where you're better off paying the overtime than you are hiring a new one for the pension liability. Mm-hmm. Now, if the pension liability ever changes at the state level, then that may not be true. Fire and police are based off of their base pay, not overtime, anything else. IRMRF is based on whatever you make in that year. So there is a difference there. Again, we are out of money. If anybody thinks they're going to go in and find the money they need from the political jobs, the political hacks, whatever they want to call them, they're insane because it's not there. I mean, Frankie Edwards figured that out once he got over here temporarily and found out there wasn't millions of dollars laying around that everybody always claimed there was. Between our personnel and our debt, there's not much left in the budget to do anything else. And Public Works has taken the biggest hit of all as far as getting rid of the patronage shops. It took them long enough to do it. I mean, Tim should have done it the first day he come in, and he decided not to do that because they wanted to pass it out to their friends, who ended up suing us. And we lost.
What's the status of that lawsuit?
We just lost. We just paid them off.
Okay.
It wasn't
How much did that cost?
I think it was between the 8 of them, I think the most anybody got was $12,000, plus they had to pay their own attorney fees.
This is Manual and those guys?
This is Manual, Art Lawson, Joe Greer, and Joe Greer still works for us. And they were all political appointees.
Now, what about Houston has said he's going to go in, and I think he said 40 to 50 people at CWLP. Do you envision a lot of layoffs for you or whoever the next mayor is?
The only place you can do it at CWLP is there's probably 2 places: security guards and the people who take care of the light. That's probably where the most patronage jobs are put. All your other jobs at CWLP are tested. The only ones that truly just they can hand out to anybody they want are those and a few management jobs. That's still not going to help on the corporate side. Mike can do whatever he wants out at CWLP. Only thing CWLP affects the corporate side on is outside sales, and you do not base a budget on a commodity, which we did. So for the next however long, in 2001, we took in like $58 million in taxes and $3 million from CWLP. Today we take in $90 million, and we're taking $7 million from CWLP, and they actually, Jay Barton and them had visions of that 7 being 14, until, guess what? Price of natural gas went down, so the price of electricity went down. I mean, yeah, there's going to have probably be layoffs, but you got to start at the top and work your way down, and then it's going to affect some vital services unless the people of Springfield want another tax increase.
When you say you got to start at the top, where do you have any
Any
ideas?
management job, like the police and fire, we have policemen and firemen that sit around the office all day and don't fight fires or don't fight crime. So that's where you have to start. You're going to go ask the unions. And I don't envision any mayor going in and asking the unions to open up their contracts before they're up. Now, luckily, every one of them will come open sometime in this term. So,
Okay.
but I believe they probably are not going to give it anything anyway, but at least if you do it on the top side first, when you go to an arbitrator, which they all want to do, or a mediator, at least you have some room to work with. That you've done everything you can. Short of saying, and most arbitrators and mediators aren't going to rule, well, you just got to raise tax. There is some sanity in it. But when you keep adding to the management side, you can't hardly go ask the bottom rung to give up.
I think, and originally you said you're not going to have a manager at CWLP, the engineers.
I think it's worked fine at the present. I'm not saying 100% sure. One of the last commissioners of utilities we had went to jail. The guy after that, I don't know if there was somebody between Bonasing when he went to jail or not. But then Lynn Frasco, who was an engineer, got sucked into selling electricity on paper instead of real electricity. That cost us $50-some million. And actually, I know nobody ever wants to hear this, but if it wasn't for Todd Rimple and Tim Davlin, I don't think that new plant would have ever been built. Because I served underneath when Irv and them fought it all the way. And I don't think anybody else. Of course, there were 6 of us aldermen, or 5 of us always had the foresight that it had to be built. But I think everybody they've ever put in that position, whether it's an engineer or what, has been political. And the only way you're going to get around that is to go out and hire somebody that isn't linked to the administration, which means it has to surpass its term. And I hate to tell you, I don't think any of these people running for mayor want to give up that plum of a job that they can hand out. I just don't think they want to do that. I know that, Springfield, Missouri has a municipal one like ours. They pay the guy who runs it $350,000. And I don't think he's hired on political. I mean, he has a set contract. And you'd have to make that contract not run with a mayor. And I have not heard none of them say that. They said they all go out and do a national search, but none of them said, all right, we'll hire this person, we'll give them a 6-year contract, which means you'd also have to have the approval of the city council. And I think the one thing I got going for me after being an alderman for 12 years, I think I do know how to talk to the alderman in a way that you could convince them to do some things that before you always had just the butting heads of the 2 different bodies.
How do you?
Go ahead.
I just am curious about what's your general impression of how Frank Edwards is doing as mayor?
You don't want to know what I think.
He doesn't, but we do.
No, I said you don't either, because I'm not about to put that on tape.
Well, but I mean, it is a legitimate question, right?
No, he hasn't. The city's still going.
Okay, is it?
He hasn't hurt the city.
Okay, that's damning with faint praise.
Well, whatever. There's a lot of things that went on between the death of Tim Davlin and what went on after that I really has jaded my vision of some people in Springfield. I can put it that way.
All right. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Now I've lost what I was going to ask.
Okay.
If you have something else.
Well, I was curious because you've now served, if you want to count Edwards, you've served on the council with 3 different mayors. And does that give you any insight from what you saw in the Hesera administration, how the Davlin administration operated, to how you'd operate as mayor?
Well, 2 of them,
not to do.
I know the mistakes not to make Karen and Tim make. I do know that. I think Frank only being there 4 months. Most of what was planned in the budget was planned before Frankie ever went in there.
Okay.
So to state it started out as a $10 million budget is not true. They already had it down to $3 million before Tim ever died. He used most of what the administration's bureaucrats had already done. So,
Okay.
I mean, that all started out. I mean, actually, this is the worst budget process I've ever went through. Because, well, one reason was with Tim dying, and then Frankie all of a sudden saying it was $10 million deficit when we all knew it was down to 3. And then Frankie decided, I mean, part of the budget, I don't know how you can give everybody raises that don't have a contract and lay people off. That did not ever jive with me, and that's the only reason I fought so hard. Let's find the money for the 9 poor people you're laying off when you're giving everybody else raises. Whether they've had raises in 2 or 3 years or not. I don't raise my prices every year. You just can't afford to do it. You lose customers. But and then there was really never no talk about. We sit there. We just the other day we moved Paul O'Shea to keep him on. They're going to take a whole $65,000 out of the TIF district, when the guy has never done anything for the TIF district. I have a list of something. When we first tried to do with this job in 2008, Paul O'Shea gave me a 6-page deal of all the things he's been involved in Springfield. It had to be top secret, though, because some of this stuff you can't talk about because we're in negotiation. There was probably 6 little items he done for the TIF. So in order to save that job, because they knew they'd have a heck of a hard time getting it through on the corporate side, which is how they usually funded it. Mm-hmm. They were just told, you put it over the TIF. And went, well, we want a little victory. We got it for 3 months. If the next mayor keeps him in that position, it's a true travesty for the city of Springfield. Because the guy, there's no way on earth you can keep this guy busy with downtown TIF, if you ever read the things that he did. And one of the things in there, he goes to every downtown function, every street fair, or whatever you want to call it. That was one of the things he listed. He did in his job. So, I mean, to move it over there is, that's a shame. Like I said, we won a little victory. It's only for 3 months. The next mayor can sit down and seriously look at this job. I mean, those are still some of the politically connected jobs in Springfield. It was created underneath Tim. Sheila's old educational liaison was created underneath Tim. They did not exist before this.
So what are some of the things you learned from Sarah and Tim that you wouldn't do?
The one thing you got to start concentrating on is going back to the basics. They both seemed like they wanted. Karen's big push was sending Springfield. We passed a new zoning deal that's just crushing businesses with extra costs that back then didn't mean no big deal because the economy was good. But now when you got to put in extra trees and everything, you have to, even for a remodel, it's hurting business. The other thing is, business people have to jump through hoops to come down to the city hall to get their stuff done. And we make it where everybody's got to take time out of their day, and our guys just sit on their butts in their offices and never make an attempt to go out and work with the people they're dealing with. And that's what's got to change at City Hall. I've been in the service business all my life. It's the only job that I've ever had. I worked at Kingpin, I worked at Horace Mann, the mailroom space planner. I've been self-employed. You go out and bring the service to the people. At government, it's you come down here and bend over backwards for us because we don't want to put forth anything. And that's the things that have to change. But that isn't what any mayor wants to go up against. Because some of it is going to involve work rules with the unions. And the one that I found out running 3 times, a lot of the people, once they won, all they cared about was winning again. So they didn't want to step on any toes. Mm-hmm. I've stuck up for the strippers at Deja Vu because it was the right thing to do. I didn't like the smoking ban because I still believe in America, an adult should be able to go have something to drink and have a cigarette. And at that time, again, we were only doing it for the city Should have been done at the state level, and it eventually was.
Now, you talk about scenic Springfield. Now, so should that be repealed then?
No,
Or,
no. Some of the zoning rules should be repealed to be more business friendly, because some of them, I mean, we're down to, we tell people you got to plant 2 trees in your yard. It's their land. Let them do what they want. Look at all the sweet gum trees that was planted early in Ozzy's administration. Look how much devastation it's caused to our sidewalk, streets, and everything. At some point in time, Karen's problem was, when I served with her, she'd go out to her deal out east. She'd see these brand new communities. They look great, but they started out looking that way. We were, what, 160-year-old city. You're going to have certain parts you're never going to bring to the standard. It makes an unfair business, like when Hall's Harley-Davidson built out by Kingpin. They had to do all this new stuff when everything around them was the old stuff. And here was, we were bringing in revenue because it wasn't a Harley dealer in Springfield. It was outside the city limits. You'd have thought we'd have been over backwards for them to it, and it don't. Rogers Supply down here, where I buy some of my furnace and air conditioning. They had it on their own. Got in a big fight that they wanted to plant trees all the way out on the, dig up part of the parking lot, plant trees between the sidewalk and the parking lot when they wasn't touching the parking lot. So then they compromised and let them put them up by the building. I mean, they took an old Aldi store and just added on to it. It's added cost, and it may only be $2,000 or $3,000, but it's $2,000 or $3,000 that don't serve no purpose.
Okay. What you were talking about in general, about things that you wouldn't
I mean,
look at in the Hesera administration.
Well, again, both Tim and Karen. I mean, Tim ran all over the country trying to stop jobs to go away from the city, and they still went. I mean, I believe when certain things minds are made up, you got to realistically deal with them instead of run around and act like, oh, we can change this. Nobody was changing the 183rd from Lee, but they spent a lot of money trying to do it. And that's what worries me about the railroad relocation. Everybody said put it on the 10th Street. I've lived here all my life. You put 75 trains on that set of tracks, you can kiss that side of town goodbye. I don't care how many overpasses, underpasses you put in. Kiss it goodbye, because nothing's ever going to be done over there. It'll be like the Berlin Wall. You're going to tear up a huge part of the north end to do this. Now, in all reality, it would be best to move the passenger trains over here, because they stop. Let the freights go down 3rd Street, because they're not going to stop, and they're not going to tie up traffic very long. And Union Pacific owns that land.
Right.
Push comes to shove, I can guarantee the federal government's going to bail out on us. And you're going to want to, somebody's going to want to bond $100 million of city money to do all these improvements. And it will bankrupt us.
Well, but the trains are, I mean, if they go through with what they're talking about, I mean, it's going to be more than just the occasional train going through. It sounds like it's going to be pretty much a continuous stream of freight.
But there'll be no, right now, if you put them all on here, there's going to be over 75 trains a day, which means you're never going to get down here.
Right. But you don't want it over here. You're saying it
I'm
needs to stay over
saying, in all realistic, if you let the freight go down 3rd Street, which will be 20-some to 30 of them,
there. Right.
and you put the 18 passenger trains over here that stop and actually tie up traffic.
Right.
A 30-mile-an-hour train or 40-mile-an-hour train on 3rd Street is not going to tie up much traffic.
But they're going to be longer and they're going to be more of
I sit down and figured it out. If it's a mile long at 30 or 40 miles an hour, it's not going to tie up traffic like a passenger train does sitting there. And now they want to go from 8 to 18 on those, is my understanding.
Now, but the medical district is really up in arms over.
And
what's
you
gonna happen
know
with that?
what? Again, I sit here from the beginning. I was lucky as well. I got to watch him tell us about the presidential library. It was going to bring $137 million in taxes. It did. Karen traded the fire station and police station, took $2 million out of tip. That was her trade. And never did understand that. There's less people now, according to what I read in the paper not too long ago, went to the museum than went to Lincoln's home. The only year it ever surpassed Lincoln Home was the first 2 years it was open. It's just that every time the medical district over there by Memorial, if you take a snapshot from the sky, the most land has been taken up by surface parking lots and not medical buildings. Now, if you were going to have a true medical district, you'd have made them build ramps, where it would cost them lots more, and they would have never done it. The medical district in Chicago has over 5 million people to draw from. We got 500,000 at best. It's never going to be The one that I learned is 12 years at Alderman. Everybody thinks Springfield is going to be Chicago or St. Louis. No, it's not. So at a certain time, you have to do a realism.
Yeah.
The operating room at St. John's is no farther away from these tracks than the operating room at Memorial is.
Now, Memorial has said that they're not going to do, they have some massive expansion.
And, you know, the day they showed me that in paper, that they were really going to do it in the first place, I believe. Because I've lived through everybody saying they were going to bring, Karen Sarah, they give Mellow Cream money to move out west because Amarillo sent them $1 million check. Well, Amarillo had happened to send out like thousands of these all over the country. I've heard Norm Sims, who used to be our economic development, and before him was Mark Gordon and Mike Farmer. All of them said, "Oh, we're working on all this stuff, but we can't show you any of it." I don't believe it, to be very, very truthful. I mean, I guess you can have all the bad, and everything they've tried to keep, they've lost. Because certain things is, my dad worked at Pillsbury 30-some years. When they got bought out by Grand Met, which was a multinational corporation, when they were done with this plant, they sold it to Cargill. Cargill was the biggest privately held grain manufacturer in the world. When they were done with it, they just let it sit. They left 80,000 bushels of wheat, because it was too little for them to worry about. When Jimmy Lay bought it, he sold it. When Alice Chalmers got bought up by Fiat, that was the beginning of the end of it. Once you're bought up by a national corporation, there's nothing a city can do to solve the problem. The two city people who moved out of Springfield on their own accord was Monomatic and the people that owned Salmon Collector. Both of those chose to leave the city. They weren't bought up by anybody. They just chose to leave so they could make more money.